On December 6th, 1917, the city of Halifax was razed to the ground by a combination of ignorance, wartime rule bending, and several thousand tons of highly unstable explosives. What if the Mont Blanc appeared off the coast of modern day Halifax? How would a modern day fire department handle the level of destruction only ever seen in active war zones? Let's find out. Let's start with the good news. It's impossible for the Halifax explosion to happen under the same circumstances as 1917. Well, it's because you won't find a ship like the Mont Blanc or its cargo anywhere in North America. The tramp steamers like the Mont Blanc have long been replaced by containerized giants that now dominate the trade routes. Similarly, no one wants to deal with explosive agents less stable than a Toronto sports team in an elimination game, even in an active war zone. Picric acid has been also completely replaced by TNT by the start of World War II, and the most common danger from the stuff today is long forgotten containers occasionally still found in the basements and laboratories of high schools. Guncon still exists as nitrocellulose, but with vastly cut down nitric acid percentages and is more of a fire hazard than an explosive hazard. They've also understandably beefed up the regulations regarding the transportation of explosives, thanks to disasters like this, Port Chicago, and the Texas City disaster of 1947. Don't believe me? Well, feel free to create a shipping company and try to move 3,000 tons of high explosives. I'll be standing outside with a stopwatch, waiting to see just how long it takes the SWAT teams to kick down your door. The bad news is that if humanity has been good at doing anything for the past 200 years, it's been discovering substances capable of accidentally deleting us by the grid square, like ammonium nitrate. And crude oil. And whatever is being stored in this rocket. And when you know it, there's an oil terminal right across the harbor from downtown Halifax, and cargo terminals on both the southeast and northwest points of the peninsula. So let's begin our scenario. It's a cold December weekday morning in Halifax. The city now stretches across the entire harbor and has a population of just under 500,000 after it combined with the city of Dartmouth and the town of Bedford in 1996. Schools are just starting, and the downtown business district is bustling as the workday begins. Across the harbor, the 25,000-ton oil tanker SS Northumbria sits on the Imperial Oil Wharf. She finished loading her cargo of crude oil last night and is set to head off to Montreal in the St. Lawrence Seaway any minute now. Unfortunately, because of the location of the refinery and the oil wharf, she's going to have to cross the entire width of the channel to get to the right side of the road. At the same time as she's playing her game of Frogger, the SS Fritz Haber is entering the harbor. She's a 52,000-ton container ship with a mixed cargo headed for the terminal near Fairview Cove. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about how this collision occurs. Just chalk it up to a combination of mechanical failures and negligence as the bow of the harbor slams into the side of the Northumbria at 8:45 a.m., cutting a 15-foot trench into her. Oil from the Northumbria's busted piping and damaged hulls spills into the harbor's waters and all over the bow of the harbor. As the two ships try to pull away, sparks ignite the oil covering both ships, setting the Northumbria and the bow of the harbor ablaze. You're now the first arriving chief of the Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency Services, a department of over 1,000 career and volunteer firefighters serving all of Halifax County, and confronting you is a nightmare scenario. Two ships are burning in the middle of your harbor. The Northumbria is self-explanatory. Burning oil tankers are burning oil tankers. Big, bright, flashy, they naturally grab your attention. I don't blame you for bird-dogging on it and assuming this is just a simple Class 3 fire. You wouldn't be the first to make that mistake either. Back in 1991, the passenger ferry MV Moby Prince ran into the oil tanker Agippi Abruzzo in Livorno, Italy, causing an oil fire. Rescue crews mobbed the tanker, unaware that the ferry and its 141 passengers and crew were caught in the middle of the burning oil slick until its charred corpse was found an hour later. It's still a mistake to ignore the Fitz Harbor, though. Even before we get into our cargo, you already need to be treating her as a Class 9 or miscellaneous cargo hazard. You don't know what's in there, and for all you know, you could be dealing with explosives, flammable liquids, or even poisonous gases. Now that you're looking at the ship a little closer, though, you notice the red Bravo or hazard flag flying from its mast, and the brown smoke coming from the steel cargo containers on its bow. There's something aboard the vessel that's either flammable or explosive, and it's reacting with the burning oil. Your first order of business is setting up an 800-meter or half-mile evacuation zone centered on the south end terminal. Remember, the vast majority of fatalities in 1917 were people trapped inside their homes and businesses when the pressure wave from the blast knocked them flat. Get dispatch to activate the reverse 911 system and get PD to start sending units door to door to make sure people are actually heeding the warnings. At the same time, start contacting the military and Coast Guard commands around the harbor. Use the communication advantage while the system's still working because, like it or not, this incident's going to take up everyone's day, and most of tomorrow too. The one thing you're not going to be doing, though, is try to fight that fire. The ship's too far out for your deck guns and aerials to reach, and the only fireboats with the GPMs capable of putting out a fire that size are owned by the Canadian Navy. The best use of your manpower right now is helping with the evacuation. That's when dispatch gets you in contact with the captain of the Fritz Harbor, and he confirms your worst fears. The reason for that hazard flag on his vessel? 8,000 tons of ammonium nitrate fertilizer currently sitting on its deck, roughly the kinetic energy equivalent of the high explosive cargo the Mont Blanc was carrying in 1917. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem. But normal isn't having half the containers crushed by the collision and soaked in a couple hundred gallons of burning crude oil. Yeah, that half-mile evacuation radius, just double it to 1 mile at minimum. And if you and the men under your command haven't evacuated already, now's the time to do so. If the Navy's still being slow on their feet letting you use HMC Dockyard as your new incident command center, I'd suggest Fort George. It's fairly close, is on an elevated position overlooking the harbor, and being a fort, it was designed to take a punch to the face. Now, since we're following the same timeline as 1917, you all know what's about to happen at 9:04 a.m. And I'm going to be honest, this evacuation area includes the downtown financial district, both the Victoria General and Canadian Immigration Hospitals, and 2 separate universities. It also holds roughly the same population as the entire city held in 1917. You are not evacuating that in 10 minutes, no matter how much manpower you throw at it. You're still in the process of setting up a new command center at Fort George when the shockwave knocks you off your feet. Even before you climb over the fort's walls, a mushroom cloud greets you. Looking out over the harbor, you're greeted by a scene of utter devastation. What's left of the Fitz Harbor's shattered hull is rapidly settling into the harbor's bottom, along with the capsized Northumbria as she pours her black guts into the sea. It's the worst ecological disaster in Canada's history, and it's the second biggest problem you have right now. On dry land, it's a bit of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is that the South End Terminal and Point Pleasant Park ate the worst of the blast. The neighborhoods bordering them are still going to be ravaged by the shockwave and debris, particularly cargo containers picked up from the terminal and tossed into the city. But with most residents out of their homes, and more importantly, away from their windows, the immediate death toll is going to be much smaller than 1917. Fortunately, that's where the good news ends. Just like in 1917, you're going to be hard-pressed to find an intact window in Halifax, including those skyscrapers downtown that just turned into 40-story anti-personnel mines. Wounded from falling glass are quickly going to overwhelm the staff of Victoria General Hospital and local paramedics. Fires from downed power lines and destroyed homes fed by ruptured gas mains are quickly going to start ravaging the southern end of the city. Even assuming the initial companies that responded to the fire are still intact and operational, they'll be hard-pressed to fight these fires without a stable water supply. With the water lines torn up all along the south end, you're going to have to rely on pumper relays supplied by the harbor itself. I know. Salt water isn't the best for fire pumps, but it's not going to melt your rigs instantly, and it's better than no water given the circumstances. As long as you flush the pumper afterwards with fresh water and don't skip on the maintenance, you should be fine. You have to consider going back to the old school tactic of using main streets as fire breaks. You should be able to anchor one along the rail line separating Point Pleasant from the rest of the city, and if you have to go further inland for the area around Granary Park, you can anchor that line at either Tower Road or Young Ave on the west, and English Street or South Street to the north. Your 2 closest hospitals are the aforementioned Victoria General Medical Campus and the Canadian Immigration Hospital right along the harbor's edge. Both will have been damaged by the blast, and given how close it is, I'm not even sure the Canadian Immigration Hospital will be viable. Even if they've both survived, they're best used as casualty collection points and triage areas at this point for wounded. before we sort them out and send them to surrounding hospitals in the province. We're now an hour into the operation, and the cavalry should be slowly making its way to you from the rest of the county, including water tenders from rural areas that'll be necessary if you want to hold this fire anywhere. You're lucky. Had I placed this explosion in the same spot as 1917, it would have taken out both the Angus MacDonald and Murray McKay bridges, forcing these companies to take the long way around Bedford Basin. Both bridges are far enough away to avoid the blast damage here, meaning that the companies traveling from just across the river in Dartmouth will be on scene within minutes, and the outlying departments well within the hour. Same thing goes for military assets in the area. Sure, Halifax isn't the jewel it was back when the sun never set in the British Empire, but still the biggest military base and Coast Guard station Canada has on the East Coast. HMC Dockyard is in nearly the perfect spot to act as either a staging ground, incident command center, or casualty collection point. It's close enough that units moving there will be able to immediately affect the front lines, but far enough away to avoid the worst of the blast. It's also full of medical and communication specialists to keep the operation going. It's also got a pool of manpower for you to draw from. Every sailor receives firefighting training as part of their basic training, and while shipboard firefighting and structure firefighting are two very different beasts, at this point, you'll happily sell for anybody who knows which end of the hose the water comes out of. Canadian Coast Guard Station Dartmouth will be too far away to be a useful location, but the ship's base there will be needed to contain the oil spill spreading across the harbor. And last but not least is the Shearwater Heliport, home to the 423rd and 443rd Maritime Helicopter Squadrons and their C-148 Cyclones, a variant of the Black Hawk helicopter. This will be the backbone of your medical transport as you begin moving more critically wounded to hospitals across Nova Scotia and Quebec, and the main point of entry for aid entering the area. I'm not going to lie to you. The next few weeks are going to be hell for you and your department as you work to reclaim the south end of Halifax. It's going to be a battle to work your way back to the terminal in Point Pleasant Park, moving street by street, block by block, and house by house, or more accurately, rubble pile by rubble pile. Last time the city got lucky. It was hit by a northeaster the day after that took out most of the fires. This time, we're going to have to work for it. Fire departments from across Nova Scotia, Quebec, and the northeastern U.S. will be joining you in the coming days, including Task Force 3 out of Toronto and USAR teams based in the U.S. As your men extinguish fires, they're going to be going through the ruins with K9s and drone-based radar and sonar units to find victims. At this point, you'll have been relieved of command as more provincial and federal agencies take over, the HMFS now just a small part of a larger operation. It's going to take weeks to finish rescue and recovery efforts, and years to rebuild the city and to get the port back in working order. Hundreds will be dead, thousands injured, and tens of thousands left homeless. It could have been far worse, though. Without the evacuation order, over 1,000 would have died in their homes and workplaces, either killed instantly in the collapse or burned alive by the fires while still trapped. Thousands more would have been injured by flying glass from the windows they just witnessed the disaster through. You and the initial responding companies would have been wiped out in less time than it takes to blink, hampering the disaster response. Don't believe me? Then just look at history. The evidence is only a few miles away.